have feeling about whether that is good, bad, or otherwise, or whether we should, is that something that we would want to promote beyond medical technology or training?
Well, the way it is there, it's just, you know, as we've discussed it, it's just too broad.
Too broad, education.
Absolutely. Well, for my opinion, because, you know, it can be read all sorts of ways. That's just private, and that's not what we're looking for. Also, the medical teaching in the last line of that, and/or educational facilities would kind of say that that's kind of broad too.
It is.
Prior to your discussing it, I was one of the people that said, hey, maybe we go to leave it like before you and Marcy's comment. But now I'm with the feeling that, you know, I don't like 2 and I don't like 9, you know, 2 in the conditional list because it's too broad, and 9 because it also can be interpreted as broad. As far as the hotels, and we have to determine what restrictions we want on that, on the conditional uses. It says hotels and it's conditional, well, we're not really sure what conditions, so.
They're not defined.
Yeah, they're not defined, so, you know, I'm kind of like, let's take out 9, 2, and 6.
Actually, it probably isn't totally reflective of our discussion, because later on we talk about, you made a very big point early on about not wanting to have food service or restaurants in conference centers, and that would carry over to your feeling about a hotel. It could be a...
Yeah, we don't want to draw from what we have.
Well, it does for me, it's only my opinion.
Yeah.
But, you know, my goal in taking that approach was not to devastate the downtown.
Of course.
And to keep that as viable as possible.
We don't want to compete with businesses that are already established here.
But if a hotel, if you were to agree that hotels were appropriate, wouldn't preclude, like some of the budget hotels have, like a breakfast service. It's not really a restaurant. It's just...
I think that's the way it's happened, that's a reality of their existence. They need to have that little breakfast area with cereals, banana, and coffee, or else nobody's stopping there, but you don't allow sit-down restaurants. That's
Right.
what they handle.
Somebody can't come in there and eat like in a restaurant.
And that may be in the conditional use for hotels, because we have it in the IP zone.
Yeah.
I think so, because
But
what we
what I was pointing out
discussed...
before is there's a separate animal called a hotel conference center.
Different.
Yeah.
And were you suggesting, Marcy, that the area where the float can land should be expanded to include OVH as an appropriate location?
Well, I'm suggesting we
putting it on the
discuss
table.
it. I'm suggesting we discuss it because, in truth, when we first were imagining this, it was to try to draw one hotel.
Yes.
And that one hotel we already have. The question of whether you
Well,
want an additional conference center, I think is something that we ought to discuss, because...
I think the ordinance allows more than one hotel. It only allows one hotel conference center.
Conference
I think
center.
so that you can have multiple hotels in the village, and the current ordinance would allow that.
I understand.
But only one hotel conference center.
I understand, but that's also, you know, I have a hesitation about strips of hotels, as we've seen in many of our adjoining communities, or motels, actually, not hotels. And as long as we're opening the table for conversation, I would want that to be part of the conversation.
Any input from the other trustees?
Well, I have a question about number 4 and the uses permitted by right. Buildings and structures uses owned and operated by the village. You know, I represent an awful lot of villages and towns in my professional capacity where there are landlords. You know, you're renting, you build a building and you rent it to the state police as a substation. You build a building, you rent it to the library. I'm not all that thrilled about the village as a landlord.
I agree.
The village is, you know, if we want to put a police station up there or a public safety building or something like that, that's one thing. But to allow any building owned and operated by the village, I have some concerns about that.
You'd rather see it be governmental uses?
Yeah.
Or owned, operated, and utilized by the village. That kind of thing.
You may want to include the ability for the village to rent somebody else's property if it's I think what Mal's concerned about is the flip side, that just
We're building.
if it's owned by the government, they may lease it to Burger King and turn it into a restaurant. As written, that would be a permitted use as long as it's owned by the village. I think what you might want it to be is the opposite, government uses, And then that's regardless of who owns it, whether leased or owned.
That's a good idea.
Michael, do we know, everybody talks about the restrictions in the sale of the property or the transfer of the property from the Orange Regional Medical Center. Are there actually restrictions in the deed?
Well, there is no, well, I think there are in the deed to the development corporation. My only comment to that is, they clearly exist, but they can be released at a future
Sure.
time. So I wouldn't zone based upon their existence.
Yeah.
Things could change in the future. You know, as this community changes, maybe Orange Regional will think that maybe a satellite hospital on
It's
the
not a
former
bad
campus
idea.
is not a bad idea. And had you zoned it away, then you got to go through another process to bring it back. Clearly, it could not happen in the current environment. But that's a private issue that could be released later on.
Well, and we've always said, if someone comes along and offers them enough money,
I'm
and
sure
they change
enough.
their mind.
Well, probably the state, just to be fair, in the certificate of need
Yeah, the
application,
dictator.
I don't think the state would enable another hospital at this juncture in that area, in this range, when the certificate of need that was approved covers this geographical area. The state is hell-bent on reducing the numbers of hospitals in the state, but that's today.
I think they released the covenant on Horton, because Horton's going to become a teaching
Yeah.
hospital.
That's sort of what was envisioned here.
So
in that
they had the
phase 9.
covenant there,
Or-
and they decided to release it because someone wanted to buy
Or
a
if it
teaching
became
hospital.
a veterans hospital,
Yeah, so I mean.
they would,
not
I'm
money,
sure,
they'll
consider
release
releasing it. So our zoning shouldn't be predicated upon that.
Upon that.
I would not predicate.
No,
I
I
agree.
think that's why we all, I think all of
Yeah.
us leave it in.
Well, there's been some discussion about not making any changes, and I think you make a very good case for not doing it. There are a lot of reasons why we should try to be proactive here and try to move forward from what exists.
I agree. What is the time frame now?
Which
I'm not
one?
sure, but I thought you.
For our,
you-
When does that expire, Meg? March.
March.
March is the, right.
Okay.
But the hospital also, I think,
April of next year.
April of next year. So, you know, when you think about
September, didn't you say?
And then it's August, September.
They told
time
you
it
different things,
takes
they told me.
first to go to adopt something, and then if somebody comes in with something and has to get the plan approved at the planning board, it's gonna take time before anything can happen.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if we were to come to a conclusion about this, we would, the next step would be to set a public hearing for this.
Well, I guess we put it in the form of a local law,
Yeah.
at least to have a public discussion, public hearing on it.
It has some referrals, town of Goshen, county,
Right,
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
which takes,
Some time.
will we be okay within our time
Well, the
frame?
county is a 30-day one, the notice to the adjoining community is 10-day,
Oh,
as is
okay.
the advance notice of the public hearing, so
Okay.
they're not hard to achieve.
Okay. That's good,
Oh, yeah.
within the term.
If I could suggest, I don't know, just to get us moving along, why don't we just go down to permitted uses? Say, hey,
Okay.
you okay with this? Okay. We're not okay with this, you know, like the government, why don't we just do that? So then we know the ones that we're okay on, and then at the end, we can say any we would like to add, if anybody would like to add any. Is that okay with everybody?
Sounds great.
Somebody has to read that.
Tell me, you have to tell me what eleemosynary means, exactly.
Boston area?
Oh,
You spell it wrong.
I know what it means, it's just hard to say.
Well, I don't. Tell me what it means.
I was having trouble with the first word.
Actually, not for
I
profit,
didn't even
not
get to that.
charitable in nature.
I was all right with or.
Excuse, what does it mean, Mike?
Charitable in nature.
Charitable.
That's what I thought.
Philanthropic, is everybody okay with the first use? Under the,
Yes.
yes, okay, so that's an okay. Hospitals, comprehensive health centers, see, this one I can read, nursing homes and sanitariums. Is
Great.
everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Professional offices related to medical use.
Yes.
Everybody okay on it? Okay. Now, 4, building structures and uses owned and operated by the village. If we just put a qualifier there,
And
for government uses only?
Yeah, I think, as Mal was suggesting, I
Yeah.
think you just change the way it's worded.
The way it's worded,
It's
just
really
so,
governmental uses.
yeah,
It
so,
could occur in a private building or a public building.
Correct?
okay, so we just modify that like that, is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Does that cover everything?
I don't know.
I'm trying to think.
Well, I think that it means that